Tina Modotti had a captivating personality from which creativity effortlessly flowed. Her path was destined to intersect with pivotal historical moments, not solely as a photographer, but also as a sought-after model, acclaimed film actress, and influential political activist. Observers note that her career neatly divides into two distinct phases, the first heavily influenced by her collaboration with American photographer Edward Weston and their shared exploration of straight photography. The latter part of Modotti's body of work, seemingly in contrast, is characterized by her deep affection for Mexico and the development of her fervent communist convictions. Upon closer examination, it becomes evident that Modotti's diverse interests from floral motifs to depictions of working-class life and indigenous culture were profoundly shaped by her experiences in Mexico rather than merely a reaction to leaving Europe and America. In contrast to photographers who prioritized aesthetics during turbulent times, Modotti fearlessly immersed herself in contemporary politics and took part in tangible, often risky activism. Her art was imbued with intellectual depth and a sense of purpose, although its output dwindled as she dedicated herself more fully to protest movements. Join us as we delve deeper into Tina Modotti's fascinating life and impactful body of work. Tina Modotti was born on August 16, 1896, in the city of Udine, Italy, and was the third of 6 children of Giuseppe Modotti and Assunta Mondini. In 1905, Modotti's father immigrated to the United States to New York City and then, in 1907, moved to San Francisco, where he opened a photography studio in North Beach, the city's Italian center. In 1913, Tina traveled to join her father and sister in San Francisco, where she worked in temporary jobs in the garment industry. In the mid-1910s, she met a boy named Robo, as called by his friends. He was a painter and poet who introduced her to artistic circles and had a profound influence on Modotti's artistic life. By the age of 26, Modotti had become a minor celebrity in San Francisco's Italian community, where she frequently appeared as an actress on the theatrical stage. Tina married Robo in 1918, and they moved to Los Angeles, where she continued working in theater, cinema, and as a model for photographers like Jane Reese. In Los Angeles, they had a vibrant social circle, which included Edward Weston, a portrait photographer, with whom Tina first modeled in 1921. Modotti stayed in Los Angeles while Robo left for Mexico in late 1921 with the intention of painting and immersing himself in the political atmosphere of 1920s Mexico City. However, his time in Mexico was tragically cut short when he contracted smallpox and passed away in February 1922. After Robo's death, Modotti traveled to Mexico to spend time with her acquaintances, including Ricardo Gómez Rebelo, who had recently been appointed chief of the Department of Fine Arts at the Ministry of Education. Devastated by the loss of Robo and her father's death shortly after, she returned to Los Angeles and developed a close personal relationship with the renowned photographer Edward Weston. By late 1922, Modotti had decided to leave her acting career behind and accompany Weston to Mexico to pursue photography and start anew. In the 1920s, Mexico experienced a period of relative calm and cultural renewal after the Revolution of 1910, attracting artists and intellectuals to Mexico City. In this optimistic atmosphere, Modotti and Weston opened a photography studio in September 1923 and planned to run it together. Modotti began taking photographs, focusing on flowers and still lives, hoping to achieve financial independence, so from 1923 to 1930, she worked as a professional photographer. Initially, Modotti used a large format 4x5 camera for formal portraits and mural documentation. However, she later acquired a handheld Graflex camera for greater spontaneity. Like Weston, she believed in composing images while taking the photograph with the camera. Unlike many photographers of her time, Modotti bypassed pictorialism and adopted a direct approach. While Weston left Mexico in 1926 and returned to California, Modotti emerged more and more into Mexican life and politics. Many of Modotti's new friends and fellow artists were involved with the Mexican Communist Party. Among them was Diego Rivera, for whom she worked as a model in 1926 and then had a brief but intense romance. Modotti's reputation as a photographer grew during these years, and her relationships with prominent Mexican artists earned her commissions to photograph the Mexican muralist movement. In 1927, she began a relationship with the Mexican revolutionary Javier Guerrero, but this relationship lasted only a short time as he had to leave for Moscow. The following year, she met and fell in love with the exiled Cuban revolutionary Julio Antonio Mella, founder of the Communist Party of Cuba. Their relationship was short-lived, as Mella was shot and killed while walking home with Modotti in 1929. Modotti was arrested for Mella's murder, but was later acquitted and released. In late 1929, Modotti traveled to southern Mexico, to the pre-Hispanic Tehuantepec, where she photographed the indigenous women of the city. During her last months in Mexico, the artist began an exquisite series of photographs of puppets and puppeteers. She held her first solo exhibition at the National Library of Mexico City in December 1929. 2 weeks later, she was unjustly arrested along with others considered enemies of the state for the attempted assassination of the new Mexican president, Pascual Ortiz Rubio. These and other events led to her deportation from Mexico in 1930. From Mexico, Modotti was boarded for the Netherlands. When she arrived in Rotterdam 2 months later, Italian officials were waiting to escort her back to fascist Italy. The International Red Aid organization helped her obtain a visa for Berlin, where she stayed for 6 months. Tina struggled to establish herself professionally, finding a level of sophistication in her photography. However, she doubted her own abilities in a city amidst a photographic boom. More accustomed to working with a bulky Graflex camera than with the more modern portable cameras like the recently introduced Leica, Modotti was out of her element, and although she made a small number of photographs during this time, they paled in comparison to her earlier work in Mexico. Determined to be of use to the communist movement, Modotti decided to leave Germany and move to Moscow in October 1930. In this new and highly politicized environment, she largely abandoned her photographic work in favor of her political work for the International Red Aid organization. While working in Moscow, she met and began a relationship with her fellow Italian revolutionary, Vittorio Vidali. The couple participated together in several missions, possibly as Soviet agents. With the outbreak of the Spanish Civil War, Modotti traveled to Spain in 1934, where she continued her humanitarian work for Red Aid. After the fascist victory in 1939, she fled Spain for France and obtained passage to travel to New York. Upon arrival, she was detained and denied entry to the United States due to inconsistencies in her documents. She and others fleeing the Spanish Civil War arrived by boat in Mexico. During her final years in Mexico, she lived under an assumed name, associating with other refugees rather than with the friends she had left behind in Mexico years earlier. She applied for political asylum in 1941 and regained the right to use her own name, Tina Modotti. A year later, in 1942, he suddenly and mysteriously died in a taxi in Mexico City at the young age of only 45. Although the cause of her death is listed as heart disease, there is speculation that she was murdered by her ex-lover Vidali and the communists. Her work wasn't really well known until the 1990s when a bunch of her amazing photos were found in an Oregon farmhouse. For a long time, people didn't pay much attention to her own skills as a photographer because they were more focused on her life and her relationship with Edward Weston. They mostly saw her as his inspiration. Even though she only worked as a photographer for 7 years, she made a bunch of really famous pictures that showed how good she was. She mixed together strict rules about how photos should look with wanting to change society, which made her photos really different and important. Nowadays, her photos are super important in the history of photography. They show both the style of modern photography and what was going on in Mexico after the revolution. A lot of people, especially women and activists, still find her photos inspiring because they're about important social and political stuff. If you look at her photos alongside ones by Dorothea Lange and Imogen Cunningham, who she talked to when she visited San Francisco in 1925, you'll see they're all really good at taking photos in a very detailed way. But Modotti's photos also have this cool, surreal, and feminist vibe to them, which makes them stand out even more. Tina Modotti's legacy continues to inspire generations with its multifaceted brilliance. Her life's journey, marked by an unwavering commitment to art and activism, serves as a testament to the power of creative expression in the face of adversity.